Today we are joined by Cody Isabel, Sandler Trainer from Kansas City, Missouri. Cody, you're a big Star Wars guy. Tell us about how Star Wars factors in to the world of selling.
I think that as Sandler Trainers, we are the Jedi trainers. If you think of like Luke Skywalker and that whole trope, the hero's journey, the first thing that he did was, no, Obi-Wan, I don't want to do that, like most of our prospects at first. Then finally, he got into the Millennium Falcon with Obi-Wan, a training center, and started lightsaber training with that orb, which really hurt at first. In Sandler, our attitude triangle, the U triangle, and that top piece, which is the mindset of the Jedi. There's so many common themes as you kind of start to interweave the different things that we teach. Negative reverse selling, generals, that's management. You've got Jedi Knights on the front lines. That's our sales, our operations stuff. There are so many different connections that you can be making through these the storyline of Star Wars. It's such an easy analogy when you're using it with clients as well.
So Cody, clearly you're the Yoda, if not at least the young Padawan as it pertains to neuroscience. In fact, you're currently working on a book for Sandler that heavily incorporates neuroscience into the world of selling and leadership. So help us understand how neuroscience relates to the world of selling.
Sure. We've got such a powerful thing upstairs, and neuroscience is based on that organ, your brain. And it's one of the most applicable science to everyday life for humans in general. You do not need a biochemistry lab to test a hypothesis when you can just go try a behavior out. And so when you think of the scientific method, that is how scientists use and experiment with things. How is that any different from a sales conversation? Because the scientific method starts with the question, and then you test the hypothesis, check your variables. Once you check your variables, you rerun the experiment if you didn't get what you wanted. In sales conversation, when you go out there and talk with the prospect, maybe it doesn't go your way, right? The scientific method failed. You come back. With your coach, you have a conversation, you reassign the variables, and you run another test. So it's very, very much an applicable science that you can use every single day.
I love that. And I tell you, you've hit on something that I don't think I've heard articulated that way before, which is in Sandler, we have some conceptual aspects to our methodology, the war between our ears. One is the idea of identity and role separation. How we are as people, our intrinsic value is different from how we perform in our role. So talk to us about how neuroscience can factor in to separating identity and role.
Sure. So if you think of maybe even past neuroscience, science in general, someone like Thomas Edison, everyone knows he failed 1,000 times before he found the light bulb. If he had not used the scientific method, he may have been thinking, well, I'm a terrible physicist. I'm a terrible at creating these light bulbs, and blamed himself for that, Thomas Edison. But what he actually did, and what allowed him to fail thousands of times, was that he blamed the scientific method. He blamed those variables failing and the experiments not working, not himself as Thomas Edison. He had that white lab coat on, and that lab coat was taking all the bullets for him, as opposed to him failing as a human. So when you use the scientific method, you can apply that same concept, whether it's leading, managing, or selling.
I love it. You know what? Let's talk about leading for a second. So how does neuroscience factor into leadership? How can leaders use neuroscience to help them in the way in which they lead and grow their teams?
One of my most favorite studies of neuroscience is the study of happiness, the neuroscience of happiness. And in that, it talks about flow states. Most people have heard about that by now, but it's kind of the pinnacle of, it's hard, it makes you a little nervous, a little anxious, but it's the thrilling zone. And if you can increase the amount of flow states you feel throughout a day, or activities that cause you to go into a flow state, your happiness scores actually go up. So as a leader, if you can gauge and understand your people well enough with psychographics, like maybe Outmatch and Divine and DISC, you can start to understand their flow states. When you can understand their flow states, you can delegate tasks to them that are within those states Therefore, you are essentially delegating happiness to your team. It's one of the coolest concepts and studies I've seen in a long time.
Salespeople and sales leaders out there, remember, the scientific method has application in selling. We set hypotheses. We get out there with genuine curiosity. We ask good questions. Sometimes we win. Sometimes we don't. We don't take that feedback, that hit on our I side. Our identities are always a 10, even though the role side may sometimes feel like we're less so. What is that lab coat, that suit of armor we're going to put on when we go out in the field to shield us from those bullets being fired at us? When we come back to the home base with your team, leaders, coaching, debriefing, working with your team, helping them come up with new hypotheses to get back out there and do it all again. As always, Sandler Worldwide Shoutouts, bringing in Sandler trainers from around the world, getting their behaviors, their attitudes, and their techniques. I hope you learned something. Hope you have a great day. Get out there, sell something, or learn a lesson. Either way, it's a great day. That could be funny.